You know, some places are really small on a map, but their history is just colossal. Right in the heart of the Mediterranean, there's this little archipelago that for thousands of years has been a fortress, a sanctuary, and a prize that every great empire wanted. So today, we're diving into the incredible history of Malta.
And our guide for this journey is Alexander Bougege's book on the very same topic. It's a really comprehensive history that takes us all the way from Malta's mysterious beginnings right up to its modern identity.
And this quote, it just nails it. Malta's location, smack in the middle of everything, made it the stage where civilizations from Europe, Africa, and the Middle East would meet, trade, and, yeah, very often clash. All right, so our journey starts way, way back in the deep past. We're talking about a mysterious culture that left its mark in stone and a shipwreck that would literally change the island's soul forever. Okay, just let that number sink in. 5,600 years. Get this, that's older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids. For more than 1,000 years, this really sophisticated society was just thriving here, building these massive temples. And then, poof, around 2500 BC, they just vanished. We still don't really know why. So, fast forward a bit. After the Phoenicians and Carthaginians had their time, the Romans showed up. But their most important legacy? It didn't come from a general or an emperor. It came from a prisoner. The Apostle Paul was shipwrecked here, and that's how Christianity was introduced, a faith that became the absolute bedrock of Maltese identity. Now, the next major influence on Malta left a legacy you can actually still hear on its streets today. It's a really cool story. So, here's the deal. When Arab settlers came over from Sicily, their particular dialect of Arabic basically evolved on its own, in isolation. The result is the modern Maltese language. It's a Semitic language like Arabic or Hebrew, but it's the only one that's written using the Latin alphabet. It's a living, breathing piece of the Arab presence in Europe. But it wasn't just about the language, not at all. They completely revolutionized farming with new irrigation methods and introduced all new crops like cotton and citrus. They even shaped the winding, narrow streets of the old capital, Medina, which were perfectly designed for shade and defense. Okay, so after the Normans and a few other European rulers, we get to what's probably Malta's most famous chapter. In the 16th century, get this, a homeless order of warrior monks arrives, and they are destined to turn this island into the ultimate fortress. So these guys, the Knights of St. John, they'd just been kicked out of their last base in Rhodes. They desperately needed a new spot to continue their holy war against the Ottoman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire basically said, here, you can have Malta. At first they hated it, thought it was just a barren rock. But pretty soon, they'd be forced to defend it to the death. And that brings us to it, the single most defining moment in all of Maltese history. In 1565, the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent sent a truly enormous invasion force with one goal, to completely annihilate the Knights and take the island for good. Just look at those numbers. The odds were absolutely staggering. You had this tiny force of knights and Maltese fighters, led by the tough-as-nails Grand Master Jean de Valette, facing an Ottoman army that outnumbered them more than 6-1. It was a total David versus Goliath situation. And the fighting was just unbelievably brutal. There was no mercy. This one story tells you everything you need to know about the no-surrender mindset on both sides. For over 3 months, the defenders just held on, withstanding constant bombardment and endless waves of attacks, literally hanging on by a thread. But somehow, against all logic, they held out. A relief force finally arrived, and the Ottomans had to withdraw. The victory was legendary across Europe. And to make sure a close call like that never, ever happened again, Valette immediately started building a brand new, totally impregnable capital city, Valletta. So after the Knights' power faded and Napoleon caused a bit of chaos for a while, a rebellion on the island brought in a new global power, one that would end up staying for more than 150 years. Under the British, Malta became a super important naval base, and its strategic value was never ever clearer than during World War II. In this incredible echo of 1565, the island went through another heroic siege. This time, the attack came from the air, as it held out against non-stop Axis bombing. The resilience of the Maltese people was just extraordinary. And in recognition of that unbelievable courage, the King of England did something unheard of. He awarded the George Cross, Britain's highest honor for civilian bravery, to the entire island.
It's a totally unique honor and a huge source of national pride to this day.
So after the war, the story of Malta changes. It becomes about creating a new identity, moving out from under the shadow of empire, and finally taking its place on the world stage as a sovereign nation.
The second half of the 20th century was just a whirlwind of change. After centuries of being ruled by someone else, Malta finally took control of its own destiny. Boom! Independence in 1964. 10 years later, it becomes a republic. And then, in 2004, it anchors its future in Europe by joining the EU. So when you think about it, from prehistoric temples to a Baroque fortress, from a key piece of an empire to a modern EU nation, Malta's story is all about resilience and adaptation. Through everything, it's always been a bridge between cultures. So the big question now is, in our changing world, what does the next chapter for this historic crossroads look like?